Greetings and welcome to another exciting edition of the Tech and EdTech podcast. I'm your host, Sean Strathy. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Adam Reid, an educator of over 24 years and currently a teacher of CTE at Anchorage School District at the AK Choice Virtual Learning Program in Alaska, teaching CTE fully online. Welcome, Adam.
Welcome. Great to be here, Sean.
And I was going to test out a new tagline in my intro there, and I wimped out on it. But what do you think of where we bridge the classroom and the cloud as a tagline for the Tech and EdTech podcast?
I like it. That it's where things are headed and are already there. So yeah, I think it's very fitting.
We'll try it out next time. Can you share a brief overview of your teaching journey with us?
Yeah, quick one. Like so many teachers, I've kind of, especially in the CTE realm, didn't start out in that direction. Went to Creighton University, played 4 years of basketball there. Was an environmental science major. Moved to Alaska to start grad school. Had 1 year of eligibility left, so I played basketball in Alaska. Started environmental engineering grad school, and ended up as a kind of a side job. I was working at the Boys and Girls Club with youth, third to sixth grade. And through my educational journey, again, not really wanting to be a teacher, but I found out, hey, my personality and everything fit great with kids. I really enjoyed working with them. Big side note, I come from my mom was a teacher, and in a unique situation where she actually taught at a prison. So teacher roots seem to run deep in family. So I headed that direction. Ended up working at the high school level, as I found through subbing and working with kids that fit my personality and my teaching style much better. So with my experience in some other jobs that I had and with my degree, I ended up working at a CTE high school teaching horticulture science.
That's awesome, and thank you for that background. I think as you and I spoke about briefly the first time we met, you're not our typical guest for this podcast. We usually have product leaders from edtech companies, but this is exactly why I'm excited to talk with you today, because you work on the front lines of the intersection of two trends that we're seeing in the market, and a reinvigoration of CTE curriculum and increases in enrollments in, I would call them maybe non-traditional K-12 institutions, and specifically in virtual learning. I think, there's a lot of policies going on right now that are going to influence parents and children's choice of where they send their kids to school, even if that's another brick and mortar school, a smaller, more specialized institution. I'm kind of predicting that, especially with CTE courses, people are going to start sharing resources, and in order to do that, they're going to be doing so in virtual learning environments. So this is an exciting conversation for us, and I want to move on to your transition from teaching CTE in person to an online program. So obviously, the pandemic sparked most of the move, I think, for you, but what did you see as the biggest opportunities for students right away?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely pandemic sparked. Our high school, we have eight comprehensive high schools in our district and one central CTE school where I was at. As kids would come to our school half the day and go back to their other school for the other half of their day. Uh, Hard to teach horticulture, hard to teach carpentry online. Then the pandemic, we weren't set up for it. Quick transition. Um, we, uh, Hit some awesome stuff. Some teachers, phenomenal teachers from industry that, carpentry teacher making kits for students to go home and delivering to students where they teamed up with other teachers. Some wonderful stuff was going on. For me, when I transitioned in, it was we basically got loaned out to the online program, and teaching a variety of things. Uh, I think some good things that came out of it were more opportunities, more exposure for students, and more flexibility in the learning opportunities that students and families have, different formats and different locations where they can do that learning.
That's awesome. Um, your CTE classes in your district, they have a impressive graduation rate. I think something like 97% of students taking at least two CTE classes graduate. what do you think goes into that, and why do you think the CTE programs have such a strong impact on graduation rates?
Yeah, our school right now, we're in a transition. For the last couple of years, we've been building to do more of an academy model, and based on some of that CTE data, where they if students take the two concentrators, their graduation rate in 4 years is much higher than those that don't. I think it's 82% in 4 years that don't, around 96, 97 for those that do take two CTE concentrators. Uh, as a CTE teacher in our brick and mortar, we had that data 7, 8 plus years ago. We were talking about this and how important it was. Um, so to see it, you know, education, our district evolve uh, into to recognizing that I want to create more opportunities for students, not only at our CTE high school, but expanding those opportunities into each and every high school. Where we see online working with that is even more opportunities for kids because the in education right now, it's hard to get people from industry into the classroom. Um, at our CTE school, we had Type M teachers, which is a somebody coming from industry without your traditional teaching background and teaching that welding class, but they're only eligible to teach that welding class because that's their expertise. It's getting harder and harder to bring people in from industry where because the pay is not there. You know, they're making way more, and the benefits aren't there. So they're staying with industry. And when we do get a few in, they would transition back. So with online, we can not only expose students with those some of those experts because they are willing to help out in a different format and on their own time. So we can utilize those community resources to help enhance our online learning.
That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So, are you asking them to like record videos of themselves, or are you bringing them into like your virtual classrooms? What does that look like?
Yeah. For example, I've got a good friend of mine. Just happened to be a friend of mine. One of the classes I have is forensic science, and he was the state ballistics expert in the state of Alaska. He was the one, he was figuring out what gun matched to what bullet and all that. And I was able to utilize him with some videos and some Zoom sessions where he could come in and help our students. Just kind of see the real world aspect of that. Other things that we can do again, it's evolving because as we have transitioned to more and more online CTE, and our district is utilizing experts for their academy model, we're finding some limitations with the academy model in our brick and mortars due to funding and teacher availability. So they've scaled that back a bit, and that's where online opportunities for CTE uh, come in and to utilize some of those connections that they've already made.
Um, so I want to talk about your district made a decision, I think somewhat recently, where you narrowed the number of CTE courses down, focusing on depth rather than breadth. Um, how did you guys decide what courses to keep, and how did offering fewer classes actually increase access for students?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Us as a program, we want to offer more. Um, Part of this transition that the district is going through with the academy model is they really want to explore what they can offer in person before allowing us more CTE offerings. We had an initiative in our district right after COVID that was I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it's basically we had the curriculum company. It was wide open. Any student could take any class that we had access to. That increased, my workload, which my preps in the teacher world, but I'd have up to 50, 60 classes a semester. Some of those classes might have only had one or two, three students, but as the philosophy was, we wanted the students to have access to anything. Um, Pluses and minuses to that from the teacher standpoint and the student standpoint. Student standpoint, boy, I was in favor. I really want kids to have those opportunities, um, but we also need to kind of focus it down to what's realistic and what we can support in our home schools as well, being online. So if there is a career path they want to go, um, one of the important things I feel in CTE is exposure, especially online, where kids can't get that in person, but we can provide that online. So our district's using this right now to exactly prioritize which schools will have which academies and which what we want to provide online.
Interesting. And I think, a lot of our listeners who are on the EdTech side of things, the curriculum side of curriculum development side of things, I think a lot of them are going through similar types of decisions, right? Where do we invest in CTE? What types of courses and career pathways can we invest in as a company and provide these schools? Are you seeing any trends in specific, I guess, career pathways or courses that are gaining a lot of interest amongst students right now?
Yeah, I think the great thing about CTE is it can be very localized with the needs that are for that community. We have a big need in Alaska in natural resources, hospitality, and tourism, education, law enforcement. We're low on teachers. What can we do to provide and expose students in those areas? Health sciences. We offer some health classes online, of course, digital learning courses as well. Like I'm looking at my class list now. I got artificial intelligence in the world, digital design, things like that really lend themselves well in a virtual environment, in an online asynchronous environment. So I think the beauty of CTE is we can customize it to fit not only the community needs but student needs, and I think that's part of the increased graduation rates. Is that not only you find that interest that sparks the kids, but they can actually see beyond getting the credit to graduate. It's more than just a yeah, I need to check this box. It's hey, I can do this. My forensic science class, for example, students go through that, and in the first one, there's a crime scene that they set up in their house, so they get some hands on, and that just evolves. That crime scene evolves as the class progresses with different components of forensic science, and they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that God, I love bugs. That's part of forensics. Like so, the exposure, like oh my gosh, this is so much more than I just saw on the whatever XYZ show. Um, as I was watching the true crime, because so many of them like, oh, I love this show and that, but there's so many aspects of it that the students can see that future as they build to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I want to take a quick pivot just for a second because you mentioned something to me before when we met the first time about the Alaskan student population that I don't know that a lot of our listeners will be all that familiar with some of the details there. Can you just tell us a little bit about your student population? Because it sounded pretty unique.
Yeah, that's something. Whenever I travel out of state or talk to people out of state, they are shocked that how diverse the Anchorage School District is. I do believe some of the data was, I think we have three of the top 4 or 5 high schools in the nation in diversity. Over 100 languages are spoken in our district, and everybody's like, "Oh, you must have a lot of Alaska Native population." Yes, we do. There's languages there, but when you have over 100 languages, we have students literally from all over the world. And you name it, I think I've had that language in my class over the years, especially when I was kind of at that central school, and online continues because you have students from all over the district. So we're very diverse that way, very economically diverse, as most districts are as well. And I was kind of build on that a little bit with the student population that we see taking virtual classes. Is there's a variety of reasons why students are accessing the opportunities that we provide. Some of them, it's socioeconomic, where they're working full time to help their family pay bills, and they're doing high school online because of that need. Others of means, or they might be traveling. I had a student in a marine biology class last year, and they were traveling in a sailboat. They're a commercial fishing family that basically lived on a boat in the summertime. We're on a sailboat in the wintertime, and he's doing marine biology while he's on a sailboat. And I'm like, you're winning. Yeah. So you have that variety, and then you have the students that just want to explore new and different things.
That's excellent. So coming back to CTE a little bit, and I think you touched upon this a little bit, so I'll ask this question in a slightly different way. But obviously, these hands-on subjects, and you mentioned carpentry as an example, culinary arts could be another, can be difficult to replicate online. maybe let me ask, what was the most challenging course to try to replicate online?
Um, Boy, right now, I think the one, and I haven't had this one. We have another teacher that's obviously more of an expert than I am. Was cosmetology uh, was a big one. I came from my brick and mortar had an in-person cosmetology course with two instructors, and talking to some of the teachers that had it online. There's some of the dynamics that you don't think about. Like, yeah, you can, you know, we want our CTE classes to be more than click your way to credit. We want them to be hands-on. We want them to have a variety of assignments and different ways to submit lessons. And Cosmo, well, one of the tough parts was supplies for kids. How does some of that, you don't want the class to be a burden on the kids. So, and then I see
Right.
I have culinary arts on my load, and like, oh, I don't have this ingredient, I don't have that, and that's where and hopefully we'll touch on this, is with the online stuff, is the flexibility is key as a teacher, and able to pivot, able to transition, able to find alternatives. I was working with a student the other day, and he's like, I don't have this to run this experiment. I'm like, all right, let's, you know alternatives. Let's look at YouTube. I could find that experiment on YouTube where he doesn't have to buy supplies and do that thing. So there's some limitations there, but I think with that, the flexibility of our teaching staff is awesome in making accommodations for student needs.
You just made me think of something that I don't know that I've thought about too much before, but we often think about CTE courses as very um, you know, a heavy emphasis on skill development, specialized skills, but some of these CTE courses require, once you get into the career and into the field, require a lot of human interaction, and that has to be something challenging to replicate in an online environment where, you know, uh, if I'm going to be a hairdresser, like I have to be comfortable not just knowing how to cut hair, but how to really interact with clients.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of these, with my culinary arts online, it's students submitting videos, and that, like, can I taste the food? Unfortunately, no, but it looks really good. Um, but I think so much, even at the high school level, some of our, I don't know, expectations might be a little bit high for students coming out of CTE programs, in that uh, we're developing a finished product, even with an in-person CTE class. The realistic is, you're not. You're exposing students. You're giving them the basic skills so they can continue on and get a higher level of education, a higher level of training that they're going to need in the workforce. You look at Perkins. Few years ago, Perkins funded Carl Perkins federal program. Part of it was the program had to go towards a certificate. That was the big. We want certificates. We want certificates. So we became certificate mills, and that has changed in Carl Perkins, because I think industry realized, like, this 18-year-old kid with this certificate in construction electricity, yeah, that's cute, but hey, let's we need to get some training, because we're good. You got a base. You're showing that interest. Now let's get you in that apprenticeship program. Now let's get you working with a journeyman. Let's take that base and move on with it. So you're opening doors with CTE. You're exposing students, and with the online variety, I think you can expose more students to more variety, and trigger that interest. That's going to lifelong learning. We all hear that over and over. Well, this is a way to do that. This is a way to encourage that. This is a way where students will go to some post-secondary education, whether it's a 4-year school, a 2-year school, an apprenticeship program, a trades training program. They're all great opportunities, and students, you know, are you know, as many options are out there. There's that type of student that need that. I worked with a student last night who's senior. We're in our senior stretch right now. Seniors are stressing, parents are stressing, and I'm working with students like, I want to get this class because I'm already working. I'm already heading in this direction. I'm like, dude, that's great. You're working. You're building decks all day long and working at your school at night. Let's work together to get where you need to be with to graduate.
That's awesome. Um, So, one of the things that you mentioned was that you take student feedback very seriously. So, you began conducting these courses online. It's been a few years now. Can you share with us how this has shaped or improved your course design? And is there any surprising insights that changed your approach?
Yeah, some of that, student feedback is so important in online classes, and you hope you get it sooner rather than later in your classes. You want to make that connection. Connections are key. Um, our staff, I'm going to kind of go off track just a little bit from your original question and hopefully circle back, but I think getting that whether it's a Zoom contact, we do our district uses Zoom, so we have Zoom. Our teachers use Zoom office hours, so we want to make that connection with that student early um, in the semester, so we can we're not scary. We're not. I was talking to a teacher yesterday. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're an actual teacher. Or you're in our state. We thought you were out of state or an AI bot or something like that." So, making that personal connection, even in the online world, is super important, and that'll help that feedback loop where the student has questions. Because by the time I get it at the end of the semester, yeah, it's important, it's vital, but it's stuff I could have dealt with a little bit earlier from that student. A couple of biggies were um, we're seeing a lot of test anxiety, a lot of just that social anxiety of students, and some of that feedback has to do with that. And they're like, boy, I'm glad I had a little extra time on this test. I'm glad I maybe had another opportunity. And I think that's important to give students some time, some opportunities, because in your face to face setting, as a teacher or as a student, you can kind of read your teacher, and as this teacher, you can read your students a little bit better of where they need some help, what's going to be tested over, uh, and how that's going to work. And in online, you don't know how in depth those tests are, so it's important to give those kids a little freedom in that, a little more expanding opportunities. So that was something I write back to students. I'm like, yeah, I made this change in the class based on student feedback prior. So you can kind of thank your past students that said, oh, I wish I would have had more time. I'm like, I can do that. It's a setting, this so students are benefiting from that. And some of the surprises are the ones I love to see are like, gosh, I just took this class because I needed this credit. But wow, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And that's the exposure that I'm talking about. That, yeah, I took it because I needed a science credit or I needed another elective and this one looked easy. It's like, oh my God, that sparks something in that student. And that's what it's all about.
That's awesome. Um, Coming back to some of the technology, that you guys use, I mean, before we even get to any specific technology, education is historically slow to adopt new tech. Um, why do you think the sector remains curious about or cautious about tools like AI, and what's been the response in your district to these types of emerging technologies?
Yeah, that's you know, I remember when I first started, there's a few, we're running plagiarism software on our classes, and our biggest were a few that were not AI, and it's like so easy to spot 'cause you see the same answers over and over, and then you're like AI, like, oh my gosh, I miss those old programs that you could see because AI is so good these days, and like so many, like I've watched podcasts on the conferences I've gone to, just AI dominates, and as a program, we're a little bit separated from what the district does, and we've like absolutely not, no, our especially our English teacher, like absolutely not, zero, don't use it, to okay, how are you using it? Let me know. Let's work together. Um, let's come up with some what's the responsible use of it. And I'm running stuff through AI detectors, and I talk with students, I Zoom with them because sometimes AI detectors are wrong. And there's different ways that you go through. It's like, what is the proper use? How districts react to that, how whether it's policy or at one of the conferences I recently went to, one something that really struck a chord was AI is today is it's the worst it's ever going to be. Every day it just keeps getting better and better. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah. So how do we implement that? There's some great teaching tools with it. There's the ability to individualize instruction. I run some AI programs that if I have an IEP need, I need something at a different reading level for a student, I can make that adjustment for that individual student. So, from the teaching standpoint, there's some great opportunities for us to better serve our students and at an individual level. As far as students' use of it, uh, I think we're gonna, and from a curriculum development standpoint, is how are we going to implement that? And it's ever changing. It's coming at us so fast that um, are the curriculum providers that we use, are they adapting to it as well? Some of the, the things I've researched and looked at is, I've watched one little podcast on somebody's like, we're going back to pencil paper. No, students are getting enough screen time on their own. They don't need so much in school. It's like, okay, I can see that valid point. What's the reality of our situation is the AI is advancing in all aspects of life. I think the key part in education is we're not only, and from a CTE standpoint, is we're trying to provide opportunities for students to grow in a career field, but also I think we need to provide opportunities for students to grow in fields that aren't there yet. We're yeah, how do we have the flexibility for students, because we're really training them to think. We have to train them to think and think critically and outside the box creatively, because there's jobs that are going to be there in 5 years that aren't there today, and there's going to be jobs that are there today that are high demand that aren't going to be there in 5 years. So as that the workforce is going to evolve exponentially and in different ways that we uh, can't really probably predict accurately right now. But we can preparing our students for that is the challenge.
You just touched upon so many great points. I think my question, did you say, you might have said before that you have one AI focused class? I think what we're seeing in the market, and you just identified it as well, as where there's an opportunity for maybe curriculum providers to provide more standardized educational content on this. It is ever changing, so it's something that would have to be uh, iterated on and improved upon every 6 months to a year, right? Like, I mean, you can't let it be static. But what would if you could build your own AI course for your CTE program? What would that kind of look like? What would be some of the things that you would want students to come out of that knowing or being able to do?
Wow, and you're asking a guy who had his head stuck in a dirt in a horticulture class for 20 years. But um, you know, I think this, gosh, this goes back to cell phones of that is digital literacy. So we're got to add AI literacy into that as we go here. So how do you, again, what's real, what's not, what's uh, accurate, what can we, how do we use it properly? The ethics of it. You know, are students using it to do their work or improve their work? Example, a student, I'm reviewing their Google Doc because it flagged 100% for AI. And they said, oh, I didn't use AI. They're freaking out. And they said, Mr. Reid, I typed it and then I ran it through an AI program to improve a little bit. And I looked at their Google Doc. I reviewed it. I could see, yep, they typed everything and then ran it through to clean it up. Like, to me, that's a good use of AI. You're doing the learning and you had technology help you refine it. That's proper use. So, in designing a course, that is something I would definitely talk about. And I, the AI is I use such a minute part of it that what's available is out there. I think, gosh, unfortunately and fortunately, this sky's the limit for it right now. And how to put that in a class would be a tough one, and that's a challenge for developers.
I think you laid out a pretty fantastic outline right there, though. We talked about digital literacy for over a decade, right? And now it's AI literacy. So, thinking about ethical use of it, how to identify it, how to use it properly to improve your work, not do your work for you, and those are all things that students can carry on into no matter what career path they choose. So that was excellent. So let's change lanes a little bit here. So overcoming adoption barriers. So schools need decision maker support, budget approvals, and training programs to adopt new tech. What's your approach to convincing administrators or district leaders to invest in new EdTech tools, especially AI-driven solutions, but not necessarily limited to those?
Yeah, that's a tough one. As I mentioned before, we're looking at an academy model for our district, or we're transitioning to in the middle. Change is tough in education. It good, bad, and ugly. It takes a long time. Teachers kind of joke that it takes 20 years for us to you know get caught up with the times, and then a solar teacher like, oh yeah, we've seen this program before. We've seen no. Then we start to see the recycle of different things. Um, and I think as I look at my administrator, he is really good at supporting his staff with new innovations and looking at new opportunities that we can utilize. He'll go to bat when we find something that we want, a product or a program that we want to use, and him and my other supervisor, they'll go to the district and ask for it, see what we can do. That takes a lot of time and it's a lot of convincing, because when you're at the virtual school, your needs are unique compared to your brick and mortar schools. So, and sometimes you're that side program, but you really need that support um, to get those innovations and those things that are needed to keep up with the direction that education is going. There's a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of very thoughtful people out there right now trying to do what's best for our students, and we all are. And to convince to change, and the change generally costs money, and we all know that's a toughie right now in the world of education. We see where some online opportunities can save some money and create opportunities at the same time for our students. So as far as developing and getting that investment in, it does take some convincing, as we're trying to convince to get us allowed to get more CTE classes on the books. As far as professional development, I think you mentioned that in there. You know, I tell you what, it's pretty awesome, the professional development that you can get right now. I've gone to a few conferences the last few years, and to network there with people in the industry and see what's going on uh, around the country is very valuable. I was in an online PD yesterday with one of our EdTech companies, and kind of got the same thing in an hour long, quick format. I got to share what I was doing, what we were doing, and I learned what some others are doing. Um, as I work, I can listen to podcasts. It's pretty awesome that uh, I'm learning so much. Like, I was never much of a podcast person. I'm listening to these podcasts, like, holy cow, these people are nailing it. This one, like, that one, they don't quite get what the reality is of boots on the ground, interacting with online students every single day. But there's people out there that are making great efforts. The professional development, the lifelong learning as a teacher is pretty awesome right now, because I can access it through technology anytime I want, and it's been beneficial. Really re-energizing as a teacher, to know what's going on out there and realize there's others doing this, and there's people trying to improve everything as we go. So yeah.
That's awesome. Um, gonna do quick lightning round, few questions before we wrap up. So, many listeners wonder which courses thrive in an online format. I think we kind of touched upon this, but which CTE course had the most unexpected success story when you transitioned it online?
Um, when I transitioned to online, holy cow, I had so many classes. That's tough. I'm gonna drop back that forensic science one. As we get into that, because students are very interested in that one, and just in their personal life. So when they learn more of the details of it, and what's going on with it, and the variety of subjects, that, for lack of a better term, but the variety of career field areas that apply, um, was surprising to a lot of them. And that's that eye-opening part, that their interest might not be, I can't work at the body farm where they're studying decomposition of dead bodies, but I love looking at DNA, and I can sit and look at a microscope all day long. So they can find a niche that works for them.
Awesome. Not everything needs advanced software. What's one simple, possibly old school trick you still rely on to keep students engaged?
I tell you what, a good happy birthday. You know, there's little things like we look in our student information system, and I can see their birthdays. Man, you wish them a happy birthday. You make that connection. Even in online format, boy, you know, Alaska, you know, most people fish or you know, enjoy outdoor activities. That connection, whether you're in person or online, is vital to that learning process.
Great answer. Scaling to 600 students demands efficient management. If you could pick only one digital tool to manage large online classes, what would it be?
Wow. Yeah, I've ran the gamut from 600 to over 800 students in a semester. Luckily, they've scaled us back to about 250, which, as our program has evolved, that's been a bit
Still a
change.
lot.
It's still a lot, but I tell you what, it seems it's pretty nice after carrying loads like that. I learned carrying a lot of students. Well, technology was huge because I started with one laptop computer, and now I have three screens in front of me, which was like eye opening as a teacher, as a kind of new to tech teacher, uh, where you found 30 seconds equaled hours if you could save some efficiencies. So, uh, boy,
So your multi-screen setup,
yeah, and I'm gonna
that's the
keep it
deal breaker
simple.
for you.
I'm going with the multi-screen setup, and going on with that, the communication aspect is tough with a lot of students, and to make that connection, but even to communicate with the struggling student, you know, the efficiencies there that you can find, and it's something we didn't talk about with being an online teacher. It's good and bad. Sorry for your lightning round. It's becoming a thunderstorm, but you know, the teacher availability. I work with a great staff, and we are not available only from, you know, 8 a.m. to 3:30. We're available. We're doing Zoom hours to fit students' schedules. You know, 7, 8, 9 at night. We have office hours. We're working with students on their time, on their schedule, and I think that's something very important to note with the online stuff is that accessibility that students have to teachers.
Excellent. If you could leave district leaders, teachers, and EdTech developers with one final piece of advice on building successful online CTE programs, what would it be?
For district leaders, don't be afraid. You know, expand, practice what you preach. Be an online learner. Be open to it. As far as ed tech developers, keep it coming because it's important. It's going to play an increasing role what students do, the opportunities that they have, and bottom line, a podcast I was listening to this morning, we talked about outcomes and outcomes, student outcomes, CTE, and students envisioning their future leads to that great outcome, whether it be graduation rates or continuing on with education at some level, some degree. But I think CTE, from my experience in person and online, fits that niche perfectly and will give the students that vision to continue on.
Adam, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Sean. It was great to meet with you and kind of nice to be a boots on the ground teacher for you.
Thanks so much.